Hey everybody, I wanted to make this quick video about the National Geographic Road Atlas Adventure Edition Atlas. For those of you who love to go on road trips and camping and doing all kinds of other things, this is an excellent atlas. I'm the type of person that when I'm on road trips, I like to look at maps. I mean, I'm sure you have your devices that, whatever they're called, the electronic devices that guide you around, but there's nothing like having an actual atlas or map in your hand. And so I really appreciate this book. I got it back in 2013 and I think it was last updated in 2004, and it's really accurate, at least on the trips that we've been on so far. So I think it was around I paid like 15 or 20 bucks for this thing on eBay or Amazon, one of those. And really quick, it's just an excellent book. Right here, this is what I use it for mostly, are the public campsites right there. Okay, so you see that little tent symbol, and then the small state park with or without camping. So with camping with the tent. Usually you have to pay for those, but these with just the public campsite, a lot of them are free. A lot of them you do not have to pay for. So that's kind of what I want to focus on today. I will refer back to this book several times in my future videos on the camping and road trip videos I do, but right now I'm just going to focus on the camping. This book has things for climbing, hiking, paddling, birding, all kinds of things. And so it's just a really great book. And I'm going to focus on the free camping that we did. This is back in 2013. We drove through New Mexico, and we went through southern New Mexico, and that was just outstanding. It was so beautiful, and it was mountainous, and the forests were beautiful, and it wasn't like, if you don't live in New Mexico, it was nothing like what you imagined it to be. But we traveled, well, we found some other places. Okay, Brantley Lake right here. This one right here, as you can see, Brantley Lake. That was a pretty decent campsite. It was a pay campsite. I think we paid $10 to stay there, and that was fine. It was actually, they had hookups, and there are a lot of other people there, so it wasn't the best for being isolated, but it was still a really nice site. So my favorite one was we kind of casually drove the next day. We went up to this awesome lookout place. I think it was in the Lincoln National Forest, and there were these giant telescopes up there, up at the top of these mountains. It was so cool. It was like this huge space observatory. And then Alamogordo is fascinating, and we stayed the night in a motel there. Went to a Mexican restaurant, which I was horrified to find out they didn't have decent salsa like they did in Texas. They had like tomato ketchup based salsa, and that was very upsetting, I must admit. But I love New Mexico. It's so beautiful. So then we drove. We went, all this way. We went through Hatch, which was amazing. It smelled like the Chili's just driving through. It was so beautiful, and along this river. And then it started getting late, and so right in here, we noticed that there were some tent markings. See those little tents right there? Kingston, the Black Range Lodge area. There were a couple of tent sites, and we were like, well, let's try and see. And there was hardly anything there. It was beautiful, though. It was really cool. These little weird tiny towns in the mountains. But we found this little site, and it was hardly even marked. There was just like an old forest, like a forest trail sign there, but it was not used. It was a very bumpy road, not maintained at all. And so we took the chance, and we went up in there, and I think it was probably that little tent north of the Highway 152 there. And it was the coolest campsite. You could tell people had been there, but it was not an official campsite, and nobody really knew we were there. There were a couple of trucks that drove by, and they had to be I mean, you really had to off-road. I can't believe we made it in our little Ford Focus, but we did. And anyway, so that was awesome. And the thing about it is we didn't know if it would be even there, because this was from this book is 2004. So the accuracy of this book is pretty outstanding. And anyway, so we went on with our trip. There were other places that we stayed, but I'm going to point out these 2 campsites that were remarkable to us anyway. Around Solvang, right here, this is California, north of Los Angeles, because we were visiting some people in LA. And we were like, well, look at all of those green tents in this whole area. That has got to be something. So we were driving up right along here, and we just decided to go kind of near Solvang, and then we went up. Time-wise, it was about, because we were traveling in October, so we needed to kind of figure out where we were going to go by 3 or 4 o'clock before it got dark, and we wanted to set up our site. And we went, I think it was one of these places, and that's the thing. It was kind of a crapshoot, because a lot of times there were no signs. There were just these long, creepy driveways. And this one in particular, in this Santa Barbara area, we were driving, it was miles up into the mountains. And by the time we got to the top of the mountain, it was almost dark, and we needed to camp somewhere. And there was a spot that we just weren't really sure about. It looked like people had camped there before. There were some old campfire sites and things. So we said, and it was a really, really cool spot too. So we decided to do that. And we ended up having a blast, except in the middle of the night, I was passed out asleep, and my husband, he is not an alarmist by any means, but he got completely freaked out. There were people who drove up to our tent, and their headlights were right in our tent, and then they backed out, and then they drove down the hill below our tent and played like creepy old twangy radio music, like from the 40s. And then I think what it was were a bunch of partiers go up there and do drugs or drink or whatever. But yeah, for that's what happened to us that night, and it turned out to be a fine camping spot. But yeah, just keep that in mind. I mean, obviously there are other places that you can pay for all of these places, but I just thought it was really cool. And every time we've used this book on other road trips, every time we see this little green tent symbol, it's usually a place where you can just kind of squat and no one's gonna really know you're there, kind of depending on where they are. And some of them, depending on the time of year, they might be paid for sites. So since we were driving through the off season, they were definitely free. Or they were closed, but you could camp at your own risk type of thing. So anyway, this is just a first little kind of introduction to the National Geographic Road Atlas. You will see me, and make sure it's the Adventure Edition, because it is awesome. It's just great. It also has, I like having maps. I like looking where I am during a road trip and then being able to compare where we are on the map. It has the time from Reno to Winnemucca or whatever is 2 hours and 35 minutes. So it gives you time, drive times all across the country. So anyway, yeah, get this book if you like to road trip and you like to camp and you like to look at maps. National Geographic Road Atlas Adventure Edition. Just check it out. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon or eBay. All right, have a good one.